Should there be a loyalty test over at the Justice Department? Some critics are questioning whether lawyers who once defended terror suspects should be working for the government. They've got sparks flying all along the political spectrum. Our Homeland Security correspondent Gene Meserve is here with some background on what is going on. Gene.
It's pretty hot here. The Department of Justice, should it really be called the Department of Jihad? An advocacy spot from a group headed by Vice President Dick Cheney's daughter Liz and a 9/11 family member poses the question. Even some members of the Bush-Cheney administration say it's over the line. Some lawyers who have represented Guantanamo detainees are now officials in the U.S. Justice Department. And a spot posted by the group Keep America Safe raises questions about where their loyalty lies.
Whose values do they share? Tell Eric Holder, Americans have a right to know the identity of the alqaida7.
The Obama White House calls it bizarre, and even some former Bush administration lawyers say it goes too far.
I think those sorts of cheap shots suggesting that a lawyer who is simply defending a client somehow shares those views are inappropriate.
Keep America Safe says its ad isn't McCarthyism. We're asking for transparency. That's why Senator Charles Grassley says he's been pressing since November for the names of justice officials who previously represented or advocated for detainees.
I'm not questioning ethics being violated. I want information so I know that ethics are not being violated.
Others say ethics are being violated if any of those lawyers are now involved in setting government detainee policy.
If you had been a lawyer and had been representing the mafia or organized crime, it would be a conflict of interest for you then to come into the administration or into the Justice Department and put together organized crime policies.
A simple internet search will turn up the names of the Justice Department lawyers who previously represented detainees, but the Justice Department will not provide a full list. A spokesman says we will not participate in an attempt to drag people's names through the mud for political purposes. He adds it is offensive that their patriotism is being questioned. And some lawyers of different political stripe agree.
John Adams represented Tories who were accused of treason back in the Revolution. This is the sort of work that we ought to be applauding, not attacking.
The Justice Department says its lawyers often work in areas that overlap their prior practice, and strict ethics rules prevent conflicts of interest. Some DOJ lawyers have been recused from matters regarding specific detainees who they or their firms have represented, but they have been authorized to participate in other detainee matters. Wolf?
All right, Gene, thanks very much. Let's get some analysis now from CNN's legal analyst Lisa Bloom and attorney Victoria Toensing, a former federal prosecutor. She established the Justice Department's terrorism unit during the Reagan administration. Thanks to both of you for coming in. Victoria, is it even appropriate to raise this issue right now, like this advocacy group that Liz Cheney's involved in is doing?
Well, if this isn't about who somebody represented, that's not at all the issue here. That misses the point. It's about whether certain lawyers have deeply held philosophical beliefs that are at odds, contrary to declared Justice Department policy. Let me just give you an example. 1970s, Vietnam War, the draft dodgers. Should the Justice Department bring in people who are opposed to the draft to prosecute those cases? Would you take a lawyer who was opposed to, wanted to have all the narcotics laws repealed, once legalized drugs, to be a drug prosecutor? No. And so I think people are jumping the gun here. It's step one. Were there lawyers in this group who came into court and said, no matter what, these military commissions are illegal? I don't care if the Supreme Court said that they are legal. They're illegal, they're kangaroo courts, and nobody should ever be tried in them. Then those people should not be deciding about how detainees are treated.
Lisa, what do you think?
Well, there's a fundamental misconception here, and that is that a lawyer and a client do not necessarily share the same values. I'm an attorney. I've represented many clients. Some of them I agreed with, some of them I didn't. But the job of the lawyer in our system is to represent everyone, even unpopular people, even despised people. You know, the former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, in my opinion, one of the greatest justices in U.S. history, represented many criminal defendants, including felons. He then decided decided matters of great constitutional law, including the death penalty. And his background as a criminal defense attorney informed his decision-making. And it is the same here. We shouldn't be conducting a witch hunt into what people as attorneys did before they came to the DOJ. If you want to ask them what their values are, whether they're loyal to the policies that they're working on, fine. But who they represented in their past lives as attorneys is entirely
I assume,
irrelevant.
Victoria, you've represented individuals who did all sorts of bad things with what they did, but you felt a legal responsibility that they deserve to have proper legal
that's not the point.
counsel.
Lisa's entirely missing my point. I'm not saying that attorneys should be affiliated with what their clients do. I have never argued that. I'm saying if you have gone to court and say this system that you have to now uphold should not be used, then that's a very different matter. It is so different. As I use the example, should somebody who thinks all the drug laws should be repealed be a drug prosecutor? Lisa does civil rights work. I'm sure she wouldn't want to hire somebody who thought that all the civil rights statutes should be repealed. And that's what this is about, and it's not making any accusations yet. Let's just find out if that's where these lawyers are, if that's what their beliefs are. It has nothing to do with who they have represented in the past. It has to do with how they've argued in court as to what should be done about military commissions.
You understand the nuance, the point she's making, Lisa?
Yeah, I do. And again, I think it's fine to ask people what they believe in. You know, many attorneys are, in fact, attorneys have an ethical obligation when they're in court to zealously, that's the word, zealously represent the interests of their clients. And attorneys may have made arguments in court on behalf of their clients because they felt that was the appropriate argument to make under the Constitution and the statutes and the laws. It may not be what they really believe as a matter of advocacy and policy.
But one
it's
other
fine
point
to ask
has to
people
be
what
made
they
here.
believe, but ask people who they represented, an entirely different question. And that's what's on the table here.
But Lisa, you're missing one point. A lot of this work is pro bono, and I don't know about you, but when I do pro bono work, it is really something I believe in. When I write op-ed pieces, it's because I truly believe what I am saying. And so whenever I do pro bono for somebody, it's because I really believe it. I do a lot for government people who I think have been screwed by the system. So when you do that, it's on a different level than just an ordinary course of representing a client.
But a lot of people do pro bono cases, for example, in the death penalty area because they're opposed to the death penalty. It doesn't mean they're in favor of rape or murder or whatever the underlying crime was.
Absolutely, but you just made my point.
Bless them for representing the despised, because that's what attorneys need to do, and there aren't enough attorneys to do that, to uphold the Constitution.
You would not put those people in charge.
That's what's on the table here.
But you would not put those people in charge who are opposed to the death penalty in charge of deciding if you have a Justice Department that said we will apply the death penalty where appropriate. You would not put those people in charge of that.
Justice Marshall was opposed to the death penalty. He was on the Supreme Court.
Lisa, should the Department of Justice release the names?
Absolutely not. I think it creates a terrible precedent. It will make it even more difficult for despised people to get attorneys in the future. Absolutely not.
What do you think, Victoria?
Of course. This is a transparent government, is it not?
So you think they should? What about calling them the alqaida7, as this ad calls them?
Well, of course, that's what ads do to get your attention. Look, you're talking about it. It worked, but I'm talking about it in the context of if lawyers are in the Justice Department overseeing areas that they don't think should even be applied, then I think we should know about it, because our terrorism laws being carried out appropriately. That's what this is all about. I'll tell you this, I'm much more open than the current administration. Do you think that any lawyer who did a whole lot of legal work but lobbied for a cigarette company could even get a job in this administration? I mean, talk about making a decision on people you've represented.
I'll leave both of you with a quote from Reginald Brown. He was a lawyer in the Bush White House. He said this, he says, "It's beyond a cheap shot to suggest that a lawyer is an al-Qaeda sympathizer because he advocates a detainee's position in the Supreme Court." We'll continue this discussion. Ladies, thanks very much to both of you for coming in.
Thank you.